Before you immerse yourself in tonight's terror, hit that subscribe button if you think you can handle even darker stories lurking in the shadows. Hey, I know this might sound crazy, but I need to tell you about something that happened to me. I've been thinking about it for days, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. I swear, if I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I would have thought it was some kind of prank or twisted game, but I'll let you decide. Before I get into it, let me just introduce myself properly. I'm Alex. I'm a college student just trying to get through life like everyone else. I've always been the type to keep to myself, spend most of my time studying or hanging out with a couple of close friends. I don't usually get caught up in weird situations or anything out of the ordinary. You could say I'm a pretty grounded person. Yeah, I'm that person who doesn't fall for strange ads or clickbait. I keep it simple, no drama. But this was something else. It all started one afternoon when I was walking through the park. It was a typical day, sunny, not too hot, just the kind of weather that makes you want to be outside. I had just finished my classes for the day and was in no rush to get home. You know how I always like to take a walk to clear my head when I'm stressed, right? That's exactly what I was doing. As I walked past a bench near the entrance, I noticed something strange. A sleek, modern phone was sitting there, face up, almost as if it had been placed there intentionally. The thing that caught my attention, though, wasn't just the phone itself. It was the way it was glowing, like it was waiting for someone to pick it up. It was almost too perfect. Naturally, I walked over and picked it up. I thought maybe someone had forgotten it, and I might be able to return it. But when I turned it on, the screen flashed with a message. At first, I thought it was some kind of prank, until I read it. Rule 1, complete every task assigned to you. Rule 2, do not share the phone or its messages with anyone. Rule 3, if you stop midway through any task, you will take the consequences meant for someone else. Rule 4, never, under any circumstances, attempt to destroy the phone. Rule 5, do not let the battery run out. I stared at the message for a second, thinking it was some kind of elaborate joke. But then again, who would go through all this trouble for a prank? And what kind of rules are these? I had no idea what to make of it, but the part about winning $1 million caught my eye. I mean, come on, who wouldn't be curious about that, right? I didn't think much more of it at first. I figured someone might have dropped it by accident, and I'd probably just hand it in at the lost and found. But then, as I stood there holding the phone, I felt that weird pull, like I was being drawn into something I didn't fully understand. It was almost like the phone was daring me to play along. I glanced around the park. No one was in sight, and the phone was still buzzing in my hand, waiting for something. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't curious. I mean, who wouldn't be? So, I did the only thing that made sense at that moment. I read the message again. The rules, something about them felt off, but it also seemed so simple. Just follow the rules, right? It couldn't be that difficult. Besides, what's the harm in seeing what happens? Maybe it was just some weird marketing stunt. I was young, I was bored, and I wanted to see where this would go. So I slipped the phone into my bag, and without thinking too much about it, I decided to continue my walk. There was no way I was going to let something as trivial as a set of rules keep me from enjoying my day. I didn't think twice about it. The next message that came through was simple enough. Deliver this package to the below address. I looked at the address. It was located a few blocks away near the corner of Main Street. It didn't seem like a big deal at first. I figured I could just drop it off, follow the task, and go on with my day. No harm done, right? But then I realized something important. I didn't have the package. I looked around, scanning the nearby area, but I couldn't see anything. And then I heard it. The faintest sound of something vibrating, coming from the bench where I'd found the phone. I turned around, and there it was. The package, sitting on the bench as if it had materialized out of nowhere. I walked back to grab it. It was a small, unmarked brown box, about the size of a shoebox, wrapped in plain paper with no label. There was no indication of what was inside. Just a simple, ordinary package, yet something about it felt off. With a quick breath, I shoved the package into my bag and started walking toward the address. The building was a few blocks down, an old apartment complex that looked like it had seen better days. The air felt thick with silence as I approached the door. The street was empty, no cars, no people. I rang the doorbell. No answer. I rang it again, a little louder this time. I could hear faint footsteps coming from inside. Then the door creaked open. I stepped back quickly, hiding behind a nearby mailbox to watch. I didn't want to get seen. The last thing I wanted was to be involved in whatever was happening with this phone. The man who answered the door was tall, with a tired look in his eyes. He just reached out, took the package, and started to close the door. As soon as he opened the package, I saw it. The black liquid started oozing from the edges, seeping out like tar. It began dripping onto his hands, his clothes, but he didn't react. He just stared down at it, almost as if he were waiting for something. Then he flinched. The liquid burned him. I could see his skin reddening as it made contact with the black substance, and he let out a sharp gasp of pain, stumbling backward. His hands were covered in the thick black liquid, and he began to scream. I watched, frozen in place, as he collapsed onto the floor, writhing in pain. He didn't look like he was dying, but the way he screamed, it was as if the burn was something beyond ordinary. It was something unnatural. The package was still leaking, but the man was too panicked to notice. The liquid spread quickly, staining the floor around him. I had to look away. My heart was pounding in my chest. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I felt like I was the one who had caused this. I didn't know what to do. I stayed hidden behind the mailbox, trembling as I watched the chaos unfold. The man's screams echoed down the hallway, and I could hear him struggling to get back on his feet, his hands shaking as the black liquid continued to burn him. I thought about going back to help. Then suddenly my phone buzzed again. Do not stop the task, or you will end up like him. The message sent a chill down my spine, but I didn't move. I stayed hidden, watching the man writhing on the floor, unable to help him. Knowing that whatever consequences the task had in store, I was already in too deep. I waited a moment longer, then slowly turned away, my stomach churning. I had no idea what had just happened, but I knew one thing for sure. I didn't want to be involved any longer. But the phone wouldn't let me turn back now. Panic surged through me. What was I supposed to do? I couldn't just ignore it, but I couldn't risk hurting anyone else either. I needed someone to help me make sense of this nightmare. I pulled my phone from my pocket and dialed my best friend, Jason. He was the only person I could think of who might understand. He was the kind of guy who thought things through, who always had a plan, even when everything felt like it was falling apart. The phone rang a few times before Jason picked up. His voice sounded groggy, like he had just woken up. Alex? What's up? I didn't know where to start, so I just blurted it out. Jason, you won't believe what happened. I found this phone, and it's giving me these tasks. It says if I follow the rules, I can win $1 million. But it's not normal, man. It's dangerous. There's a package, and I had to deliver it to this guy, but something happened. The package, it leaked this black liquid, and the guy, he got burned. He's on the floor right now. I don't know what to do. Jason was quiet for a long moment, probably processing what I was saying. I could hear him moving around on the other end of the line, like he was trying to figure out how to respond. Wait, what? A phone? $1 million? Are you serious? His voice had shifted from groggy to concerned. Alex, you need to get rid of that phone. Whatever it is, it's messed up. I don't care about the money. You're in over your head. Just get rid of it. I can't, I said, my voice trembling. It says I can't destroy it, and if I stop the task, it'll hurt someone else. I don't know what to do, man. I'm scared. The guy, he got hurt. What if I'm next? What if something worse happens? Jason sighed heavily on the other end. Alex, I don't know what the hell's going on, but you need to stop. You can't just keep following these tasks. You can't let yourself get sucked into it. I know, but I can't just ignore it. I've seen what happens. You heard what I said, right? The guy, he's still on the floor. I don't know how to stop it. What if it comes after me next? I ran a hand through my hair, pacing back and forth. Jason didn't respond immediately, and for a second I thought he might be in shock. But then he said, All right, well, what do you need from me? I'll help you, Alex. Just don't make any more decisions without me. I don't know what to do, I whispered, my voice shaking. Jason's voice came through the phone, quieter now. "Don't do anything without thinking it through, Alex. You're not alone in this." The call ended abruptly, and for a moment, all I could hear was the loud buzzing of the phone in my hand. I had no idea what would happen next. The next day, I got the call. Jason had slipped into a coma. I couldn't believe it. How could this happen? I had spoken to him, just told him about everything, and now he was fighting for his life. The phone buzzed again, this time with a new message. "Never try to ignore the rules." I froze, the weight of it all crashing down on me. I remembered the rule, the one I had read earlier: do not share the phone or its messages with anyone. I had broken that rule, and because of me, Jason was now lying in a coma, fighting for his life. The guilt gnawed at me, eating away at every ounce of logic I had left. The phone vibrated again, the screen flashing with a new task. My heart skipped a beat as I read the message: "Cut the wires." I stared at the screen, my mind racing. Cut the wires? What wires? Where? The phone didn't provide any details, just a cold command. My palms were sweaty, my hands trembling as I tried to process what I was supposed to do. But there was no time to think. The phone buzzed again, almost impatiently, as if reminding me that I couldn't stop. It felt like I was being pulled into some dark, twisted game, and I didn't have a choice but to follow the rules. I grabbed my jacket, stuffed the phone into my pocket, and headed out the door. My breath came in shallow gasps as I walked, the weight of the phone pressing against my chest like a ticking time bomb. I didn't know where I was going, but the phone guided me, a strange pull leading me toward the outskirts of town. Eventually, I found myself standing in front of a local power station, the tall fence surrounding it looming over me like a fortress. The hum of machinery filled the air, and I could feel the electricity in the air. I had no idea what I was supposed to do here, but the phone had led me this far. I couldn't stop now. The phone buzzed again, this time with a new chilling message: "Cut the live wire." My heart raced. I wasn't an electrician. I had no idea how to safely cut a live wire, but the phone didn't care. I walked toward the gate, which was surprisingly unlocked, and slipped inside. The station was eerily quiet, the only sound being the steady hum of the power lines. I found the wires quickly, tangled and sparking just slightly, as if waiting for me to make the move. The phone vibrated again, the screen flashing with urgency. "Cut the wire, now." I hesitated, my hand hovering over the wires, but I couldn't risk it. I couldn't bear the thought of the phone's consequences. Taking a deep breath, I pulled a pair of pliers from my bag and cut the wire. The world seemed to hold its breath for a moment. Then the entire neighborhood plunged into darkness. It felt like time had stopped. My heart pounded in my chest, and I could feel the panic rising in my throat. But the worst part was the silence that followed, complete, suffocating silence. Then in the distance, I heard the first scream. It was faint at first, but it grew louder, more frantic. People were screaming in terror, confusion, and pain. I stood frozen in place, too scared to move, as the screams echoed through the streets. It was like something had gone horribly wrong, and I had just made it worse. I wanted to run. I wanted to get as far away from this place as possible. But I couldn't. The phone was still in my pocket, buzzing, demanding more from me. The next morning, as I sat in my room, the weight of the night pressing down on me, I turned on the news. The screen flickered to life, and I immediately regretted it. The headline flashed: "Mysterious causes blamed for local families' deaths." My stomach dropped. They were talking about the family from the neighborhood, the ones who lived just a few blocks away from the power station. According to the report, they had died overnight, their cause of death still unexplained. But the words "mysterious causes" stuck with me. Had the blackout been the cause of their deaths? Was I responsible? Guilt-stricken and terrified, I could feel the weight of everything pressing down on me. I had to do something. I couldn't keep running from this nightmare. The lives of innocent people were at stake, and I was the one who had set it all in motion. I couldn't ignore it any longer. I decided to report the phone to the police. It was the only way to stop this madness, to make them understand what was happening. I didn't care about the consequences anymore. I just needed to make sure no one else got hurt. My heart raced as I walked toward the police station, every step heavier than the last. The cold air stung my face, but it didn't matter. I was determined to do the right thing. The phone, however, had other plans. As I reached the entrance of the station, the phone buzzed violently in my pocket. I pulled it out, my hands shaking as I looked at the screen. The message was clear and chilling. If you complain, your family may be at risk. I froze, my blood running cold. The words seemed to claw their way into my mind, twisting my thoughts. I stared at the message, feeling a lump form in my throat. I wasn't just being threatened anymore. They were threatening the people I loved. My family, my parents, my sister. The thought of them being hurt because of my actions made my stomach churn. I looked up at the police station, standing just a few feet away, but I couldn't move. I felt paralyzed, caught between doing the right thing and protecting my family from whatever this thing was, whatever the phone represented. The seconds dragged on. The phone buzzed again, but I didn't look at it this time. I was too scared. What if I told the police? Would my family be safe, or would I just be putting them in more danger? I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself, but nothing felt steady. Nothing felt real. I turned around, walking away from the station, the weight of the decision bearing down on me. What was I supposed to do now? How could I stop this? How could I keep my family safe? The phone buzzed again, but I couldn't bring myself to check it. I didn't want to know what it had to say next. I didn't want to be a part of this anymore. But deep down, I knew there was no escaping it. The game had already started, and I was a player now, whether I liked it or not. The next message flashed on the screen, and I felt my stomach drop. Erase your own existence. I stared at the words, unable to comprehend what I was reading. I had already done so much, followed every horrific command, but this was different. Erase my own existence? How was I supposed to do that? What did it even mean? A cold sweat broke out across my forehead. I could feel my heartbeat in my chest, pounding with an intensity that made it feel like the walls were closing in around me. How could I erase myself? How could I make my entire life disappear? The phone vibrated again, this time more forcefully, as if it were reminding me that I had no choice. My mind raced, spinning out of control. Every part of me screamed to fight back, to refuse, but I knew what would happen if I didn't follow through. I had already seen the consequences of defying the rules. My best friend was in a coma. A family was dead. I didn't want to risk anything happening to my family too. My hands shook as I unlocked my phone. I opened my social media accounts, each one a part of me. Each post, each photo, each interaction was a part of my life. But now they were all just targets. I had to get rid of them. I had to disappear. With a sickening sense of finality, I started deleting everything. Every profile, every message, every picture. It felt like I was slowly erasing the person I used to be, piece by piece. The weight of it all made me want to collapse, but I couldn't stop. The phone wouldn't allow it. When I finished, I felt a hollow emptiness. I didn't exist online anymore. I wasn't anyone to the world anymore. But it wasn't enough. The phone buzzed again. Burn your ID. I felt like I was suffocating. It wasn't just my online life anymore. It was my real physical existence that was being erased. I walked to my drawer, pulled out my ID, and stared at it for a moment. This was me, my identity. But I knew what I had to do. With trembling hands, I lit a match and set it to the edge of the card. It burned slowly, curling at the edges, the flames licking higher until the card was nothing but ash in my hands. I was no one now. Nothing. The phone buzzed again, demanding more, as though this was just the beginning. I took a step back, my breath shallow, and looked at the world around me. It felt like I was disappearing from everything. My life, my identity, gone. I was erasing myself, piece by piece. And for what? $1 million? A twisted game that held my life in its hands? I didn't know how much more I could take. The phone buzzed again, and the screen displayed another command, but I couldn't bring myself to read it. Words on the phone screen blurred together for a moment, my mind struggling to process what they meant. Kill your professor. Failure means end up in jail. I felt my breath catch in my throat, my entire body going cold. This was it. This was the breaking point. How could they ask me to do something like that? How could I, just a student, be forced to take someone's life? My professor? Someone I had respected? How was this possible? I stared at the phone in my hand, my fingers gripping it so tightly I was sure it would crack. It felt like the walls were closing in on me. I could feel the panic rising, choking me. I had done everything it asked of me, followed every rule, and now it was asking me to cross a line I couldn't come back from. I couldn't do it. I wouldn't. I knew the consequences for refusing. I had seen it, the coma, the blackout, the deaths. I could end up just like them, or worse, my family. But I didn't care anymore. I couldn't live like this. I couldn't do any more of its bidding. I held the phone up high as if it were the source of all my pain, all my terror, and with one desperate, frantic motion, I slammed it onto the floor. The crack of the screen was louder than I expected, but when I looked down, the phone was still intact. The screen flickered for a moment, and I felt a shiver run down my spine. It wasn't broken, it wasn't destroyed. I tried again, this time with all my strength. I smashed it against the edge of the table, hoping to shatter it into 1,000 pieces. But it didn't break. It didn't even crack. Instead, the screen flashed, and a new notification appeared. My heart skipped a beat as I read the words, "Termination initiated." A wave of terror washed over me. What did that mean? Was it over? Was I finally free? Or was this just another step in the sick game that had taken over my life? I turned to my laptop, still open on the desk beside me, and froze. The screen flickered to life, and a new message appeared there too. Termination initiated, commencing final phase. I stumbled backward, my mind racing. What was happening? What did this mean for me? Was I about to be erased like the phone had erased my existence? The next day, my face appeared in the news. I stumbled upon it by accident, my hands trembling as I scrolled through my phone, trying to distract myself from the chaos in my mind. The headline caught my eye and I froze. Local student dead in unexplained incident. The article was brief, detailing a mysterious death that had occurred overnight. No cause of death was mentioned, but the authorities were baffled, and there was a mention of strange circumstances surrounding the incident. The words blurred together as my heart pounded in my chest. I stared at the screen, unable to comprehend what I was seeing. How could this be? I was reading about my own death, but how could I be reading this if I was still here? Suddenly, the world around me shifted. I woke up to a horrific sight. I was still trying to process everything that had happened, but something felt different. The darkness around me felt heavier, like it was pressing down on me. My head ached, and my limbs felt heavy, as if I hadn't moved in days. I rubbed my eyes and glanced around, my breath catching in my throat. I wasn't at home anymore. I wasn't anywhere familiar. I was lying on a cold metal table in a dimly lit room. The air was thick with the scent of something old, dust, decay, something I couldn't quite place. The walls around me were bare, except for strange markings etched into the surface, as if someone had scratched them in a hurry. But that wasn't the worst part. The room was filled with bones, piles of them, human bones. The bones of countless bodies scattered in disorganized heaps across the floor. Some were stacked neatly, while others were just thrown around carelessly, as if they were discarded without a second thought. The sight made my stomach lurch, and I struggled to sit up, but the moment I did, I noticed the clothes I was wearing. I wasn't in my own clothes anymore. I wasn't in anything familiar. I was wearing a simple, plain jumpsuit, devoid of any color or distinguishing features. It felt sterile, like something out of a hospital or a prison. But the strangest thing was the number printed on the sleeve, 048. I stared at it in confusion, my mind spinning. Why did I have a number? What was this place? What had happened to me? I tried to stand, but my legs were weak and I stumbled. Panic surged through me, and I rushed to the door, desperate for some sort of answer. As I reached the door, I hesitated. What was I supposed to do? Where was I even supposed to go? But before I could make a move, I heard footsteps behind me. My heart stopped, and I turned around, but no one was there. The silence was suffocating. "Welcome to the collective," a cold, emotionless voice echoed through the room, though I couldn't see where it came from. The words sent a shiver down my spine. The collective? What did that mean? Why had I been brought here? The lights flickered, and I could feel the oppressive presence all around me. I was no longer in control. I had been marked, and now my life was no longer my own. But as the words lingered in the air, I realized something. There was no one here. No figure, no person, just an empty room and a disembodied voice that sent shivers down my spine. No one had entered, no one had spoken directly to me. It was all part of the twisted illusion. I tried to move, to escape, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The silence was suffocating. The bones around me, the cold floor, the numbered jumpsuit. It all felt like some nightmarish dream I couldn't wake up from. But then, something else began to emerge in my mind, something that made my blood run cold. I remembered the professor. It wasn't until after everything had spiraled out of control that I started piecing together the strange details. It all started during a random class, weeks before I had found the phone. I had stayed after class that day, hoping to get some help with my latest assignment. The professor had been packing his things, shoving papers into his bag, preparing to leave. It was then that I noticed it. A small, almost imperceptible detail that I had completely missed at the time. As the professor bent over to zip his bag, I caught a glimpse of something that stopped me in my tracks. There, tucked inside the bag, was a folded jumpsuit, the kind of uniform used by the collective. As the professor shifted his bag, I saw it more clearly. The jumpsuit had a number stitched into it, 047. I froze. I thought I had imagined it at first. Maybe it was just a coincidence, just a piece of clothing he'd picked up from somewhere. But no, I had seen that same number on my own jumpsuit when I woke up in that sterile room, 048. I immediately called out to him, my voice trembling. "Professor, what's that in your bag?" The professor looked up quickly, his face going pale. He stumbled backward, nearly knocking over a chair in his rush to close the bag. He was clearly flustered, panic flashing across his face. "Nothing, Alex," he said quickly, his voice tight. "It's nothing. Just a mistake. Don't worry about it." But I could see it in his eyes, fear. He knew something I didn't, and he was trying desperately to hide it. Before I could say anything else, he grabbed his bag and rushed out of the room without another word, leaving me standing there with a sinking feeling in my stomach. It was then that I started to piece it all together. The number on the jumpsuit, the professor's panicked reaction. He wasn't just a professor. He was part of this, part of the collective. And the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. The collective had been manipulating everyone around me, and the professor, he had to be involved. Maybe he had been trying to escape, trying to break free from whatever control the collective had over him. But now I realized he hadn't escaped. He was just as trapped as I was. The professor, number 47, he was part of the collective. And now I was number 048. It was like a final piece to the puzzle. I wasn't just a victim of some twisted game anymore. I was part of something far darker, a web that consumed anyone and everyone who got too close. The collective wasn't just a group of people. It was a force, and it wasn't finished with me yet. As I stood there, the number 047 burned into my mind. The terror set in. Maybe he hadn't followed the rules. Maybe he'd tried something wrong, something the collective couldn't tolerate. That's why they'd tasked me with killing him. And now, maybe I hadn't followed the rules either. I hadn't done everything perfectly. I had tried to pass off tasks, ignored warnings, and even thought about destroying the phone. What if I was next? What if they knew? Panic clawed at my chest. Could I die for my mistakes? The thought was unbearable. Am I next? Would I be the next one to disappear, like a pawn in their sick game? So this is my story. I don't know if I'll ever get out of this, if I'll live to see another day. Just remember, don't trust anything you see, especially when it promises you something you want. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe for more creepy tales. If you'd like to support the channel, consider buying me a coffee on Ko-Fi. Every bit helps. Links in the description.